Secretary Reich, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you.
Well, this week the Trump administration released aggressive new guidelines on immigration enforcement, essentially broadening who can be deported. There are an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country, nearly a quarter of them here in California. What would happen to California's economy if that promised crackdown happens?
If that large number of undocumented workers were deported from California, the California economy would be crippled. We are incredibly dependent on those workers in the agricultural sector, especially in the Central Valley, but also elsewhere in the state. This is a booming economy, and it's booming in part because we have so many immigrants, some of whom are here illegally.
I wanted to ask you about H-1B visas as well. Big issue in Silicon Valley. These are visas that are given to professional foreign workers. Some lawmakers feel the program needs to be overhauled, that it is subject to too much abuse by companies that take advantage of it. What is your take on that program?
When I was Labor Secretary, I took a hard look at the H-1B program and found that it was abused on occasion by employers who did not need the workers that they said they needed. They were trying to undercut the wages of American workers who were available to do these jobs. And so we've got to make sure that this program serves the purpose it was intended to serve, and that is to make sure that, particularly in high technology, employers get the skills they need and that are not available in the U.S. workforce.
You have said tech companies could be pivotal in changing the economic system to empower more people nationally. How so?
Tech companies have a unique and important role, not only as the harbingers of the future and the frontier of American industry, but also in terms of all of the jobs that will be displaced over the next 10, 20, or 30 years because of technology. And tech companies, I think, have a responsibility and also an economic self-interest in making sure that we don't lose our middle class because of technological displacement. After all, who is going to buy all their gadgets if people can no longer afford to buy them because there's no longer an American middle class?
Do you think that they're doing enough to help with policies that would put that in place for essentially middle-income Americans?
No, at this point they're doing nothing. The only public policy positions they're taking have to do with intellectual property and trade and the normal range of issues that you would expect tech companies to worry about with regard to public policy. I wish they were more vocal and more innovative with regard to helping American workers essentially get new jobs that pay as much as the old jobs pay when they are displaced by technology.
Why should they do that, though? Why should they feel obligated to do that?
They need to do it because they actually are responsible for a huge amount of technological displacement already occurred, but even more in the future. And they have the intellectual wherewithal to actually do something about it, to make it easier for American workers, for example, to get retrained.
President Trump's latest Labor Secretary nominee, Alexander Acosta, is a former Justice Department official, the son of Cuban immigrants, graduated from Harvard. What do you see as the most important task facing Mr. Acosta at this time?
I view the Labor Department as the Department of the American workforce, not just organized labor. And the important task here is to end the stagnation of American wages, which for almost 40 years has caused Americans greater and greater anxiety and worry. The second big problem is insecurity of wages and jobs. We are becoming a nation in which more and more workers know less and less about what they'll be doing a month or 2 months, and certainly a year from now, and they no longer have the ability to predict what their income is going to be. This is a huge problem. It's a sociological problem, it's an economic problem, it's a problem that has generated an enormous amount of anxiety in American families.
It's the type of economic anxiety, though, that President Trump tapped into, right, when he was running for president. And now that he's elected, he says he wants to grow the economy by 3%.
That's a very difficult achievement. Number one, because the population is not growing. The baby boomers are leaving the workforce. And Therefore, you have to rely almost entirely on the workers who are employed becoming more productive. All of the data suggests that productivity is not growing nearly as fast as it used to.
Any advice you have for the new labor secretary if and when he's confirmed?
I would say generally, keep your eye on what is happening to the bottom 60%. Not only in terms of wages, but also their pensions, their job security. Make sure that they are entering, to the extent possible, into a grand bargain with employers, in which employers treat them as assets to be developed instead of costs to be cut. It also seems to me why we are facing and have been facing this great populist wave, both an authoritarian populism on one side that elected Donald Trump, and also a democratic populist kind of progressive populism exemplified by Bernie Sanders. Populism is not necessarily bad. In fact, the anger and indignation that has prompted it is completely understandable. But it is bad if it generates a kind of authoritarianism that undermines every value we have in this country.
Secretary Robert Reich, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.